Study Spectrum to another lecture with me, Aishwarya Soni, and today I'll be explaining you a little bit more about the structure of a cell and microorganisms. So just for starters, let's just understand a little bit more about cells, since it's the lecture based on the study of the structure of cell. So cell is a fundamental unit of any living organisms. So let it be a unicellular organism or let it be a multicellular organism. Multicellular organisms include the organisms like plants, animals, human beings for that matter. So we all are made up of cells, or in other words we can say that the cells are the building blocks of life. So how did one scientist come up with the discovery of cell? So well, the name of the scientist was Robert Hooke, and in the year 1665, that is around 350 years ago, this scientist was observing a thin layer of cork under a microscope. So what he observed was that these cork had small compartments in them, just like honeycomb maze had. So I hope that sometime or the other you might have seen a block of honeycomb maze fallen down, and you could see the hexagonal pattern that are present all over it. So that was the exact same structure that he saw in the cork, and he finally decided to name these compartments, these small many compartments in the observation under the microscope, that to be named as the cells. So like this, the invention of cells was seen, the observation of it was seen actually. So behind every scientist, actually it's equally important to understand about the history of the discovery along with studying the discovery in detail. So that was the main purpose of telling you why that the history behind it, why was it discovered and how was it discovered. So let's go to the next point about cells. So cells, we know that they are a definite structure. That means they have all the constituents in them, all the components in them in a defined manner, in a defined composition to carry out life processes, and that sustained life in the end. So now we can actually observe a cell under a compound microscope, but to observe the cell's components, that are the organelles over here, organelles that carry out the life processes, it is so infinitesimally minute that you cannot actually observe them under the compound microscope that gives you magnification of around 100 times. So for that purpose we have a specialized microscope, that is the electron microscope. And this electron microscope provides you around 2 billion more times of the magnification. So imagine how minute these components, these organelles will be present within the cell in the precise composition. So in this way, when the scientists actually try to discover about the organelles, they use the electron microscope, and they found out that these organelles had very unique and different shape from each other. So we'll be talking about the structure of it after the introductory lecture. So let's just shift to the next point, that's about the prokaryotes and the eukaryotes. Now this is a new term to you, I know. So these names, that is the prokaryotes and the eukaryotes, they descended from the Greek origin. And now in the Greek origin, the word pro means before time. So let me write it down. In the Greek origin, pro meant before, and karyon was nothing but the net or the kernel. So karyon is nothing but it's actually the nucleus of the cell. Just like I explained to you that the brain is the main operating system of the whole of the body. Just like in the system of computers, that computers have a CPU for them to be functioning, and CPU is one unit, that is a central unit that carries out all the functions in the computer. Similarly, in the human beings, the brain is that central unit that carries out all the functions, from walking to talking to movement to eating to sleeping, let it be any movement. So in this way, to carry out the functions of the cell, there is one central unit, that is the nucleus. So in the Greek origin, the prokaryotes meant that pro meant before time, and karyon was nothing but a nut or a kernel in that time, and later it was discovered that this nut or kernel is also known as a nucleus. And the next term that will come is eukaryotes. Now eu means a new, and karyon again, it meant the nucleus. So it means a new or a true nucleus. Now why this distinction? Why this classification of prokaryotes and eukaryotes? So the point for this is that there had been evolution. We have come till this place. We have evolved from apes, from the monkeys, and actually monkeys are our ancestors. We all know that. But all this was a very slow and a gradual process that came up over the span of thousands and thousands and millions of years. And finally the outcome is the organisms that you see in today's world. So there are certain animals that just couldn't, unfortunately, get evolved according to the surroundings, according to the adaptations, and hence they were just retained up there where they are. But in our case, we evolved, we adapted, we started various activities to sustain in life to the changes that were given by the nature to the mankind. And this is how we came in the whole picture. So the organisms that were before time, like right in the span of evolution, were the prokaryotes. Now these prokaryotes, they did not have compartments. Like I just now told you in the case of cells, that cells had compartments in them, various compartments to store various components or various organelles. But in prokaryotes, that was not the case. In prokaryotes, all the material, all the organelles of the plants were all suspended in the cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is nothing but it is the base of the whole cell that retains the whole of the organelles in it. So that means that, and they did not even have a very well defined nucleus for that matter. So for that reason, they were classified to prokaryotes. But as we moved on to evolution and things started getting modified, organs started getting modified, functions were very specific, so came the organisms that are eukaryotes in the picture. Now the examples for prokaryotes and eukaryotes can be both the bacteria. Well, there are bacteria that are present all around us. These bacteria are microorganisms. I'll be explaining about it in detail to you later. But let's just understand that there's a microorganism that's named as bacteria, and it was right from the first stage of evolution to the last stage of evolution, and it is both harmful and both it is helpful for our processes of life. So one example could be the bacteria for both, but bacteria has adapted itself to the evolution process in such a way that it forms compartments and it has well-defined nucleus and performs all the functions in a very precise manner. Now let's switch back to the cells. Now cells are nothing, they are very independent unit, and they can carry out the function of their replication very independently, that is by their own help, by their own means. Now what is replication? Now when you see your skin, and when I told you that these cells are the fundamental unit and the basic unit of the living being, just analyze this on your own self. And I also explained to you that we need an electron microscope to check the components of the whole of the cell. And I told you that the magnification, that is the observing power from a compound microscope, would be around 2 billion times more. So imagine how small these cells are going to be. Then, now just let's get back to the main point that I'm trying to say you. Just observe your skin layer. Your skin layers, that's made up of so minute cells. They're made up of millions and millions of layers of cells. So how do these cells are formed? How are they always revived? if you are tanned for a period of like say 1 week, after 1 week the tanning gets off. How is that possible? That is possible because of the cells that are being, new cells that are being formed. So these new cells, they come back on the layer of the skin, and this gives an example that cells are independent units and they can replicate and reproduce onto their own and hence support the life system. So the purpose of giving this brief to you was to clear the objectives that we're going to study in today's chapter. So today's chapter will be covering the topics about how cells are a fundamental unit of life. The second point we'll be covering would be about the structure and the components or the organelles that are present within the cell. Right over here, the various components that are the organelles. The next topic we'll be covering, the next objective for this chapter would be that we would understand about microorganisms, and we would understand how certain microorganisms are good for us and how certain microorganisms are not good for us. So these microorganisms which are not good for us are known as pathogens, but we'll talk about it in a while. And just with the example that I told you about bacteria in this evolution process, so there are certain bacteria that are good for us and certain bacteria which are not good for us. That's one example. So we'll be talking about all of this in detail, but let's further move on to study about the structure of a cell, and that would be in regarding to a eukaryote and not a prokaryote. So the example for this would be the animal cell and the plant cell. So let's go on to study a little bit more about that. Here what we have is the structure of the animal cell. Now we know that the animals are eukaryotes since I explained that to you. So over here, this is the whole of the structure of the animal cell, that is consisting of the cytoplasm, that is this pink color fluid that you see over here that I've shaded the whole region is the fluidy area, that is the cytoplasm. So our first marking is over here. Then I told you about the nucleus. So this is a nucleus that is centrally located over here. We'll go in details in a while. Right now we'll just label them all. What next we have is over here, that is the mitochondria. Mitochondria is also known as the powerhouse of the cell. So that is our mitochondria. What next we have is the Golgi body over here. The Golgi body is over here. We'll mark that. Then we have the vacuoles that are over here. And lastly, nothing but all these organelles. What I explained to you was nucleus, cytoplasm, vacuoles, mitochondria, Golgi bodies. These are nothing but the organelles that carry out the functions of the cell. So these are lastly embedded in the cytoplasm, that are the Golgi bodies, the mitochondria, the vacuoles, the nucleus are the organelles that are embedded in the cytoplasm. That is the fluid that you see over here that I've shaded in the pink color, and all this is enclosed in the cell membrane. So here the outer covering that you see is the cell membrane. This, all of it. Now let's go in a little detail about cell membrane. So I've written the short note over here in bullets. So cell membrane is nothing but the outer covering that I just now showed it to you. And over here, this is the outer covering of the cell, whole of it. Then cell membrane provide protection to the cell, and they provide regulation of flow of substances in and out. Now cell membrane, you'll find that this cell membrane is present on all the cells present in organisms, in multicellular higher organisms, and all this cell membrane is responsible for enclosing in all the components that are the organelles of the body, and these are responsible for providing them the protection against the outer environment, protection against shocks, protection against any other factor or any other microorganism entering into them. and they also help in the regulation of the flow of substances in and out. Now substances would be like, you know that blood is the cell that is responsible for providing oxygen to every cell, and that is the function that it performs. So what it does is it takes the oxygen molecule and it transports it inside of the cell with the through this to the cell membrane, because cell membrane is porous and it can allow the in and out of substances. So what it does, the blood cells, they provide the oxygen molecule to the inside, takes the carbon dioxide molecule outside and the debris outside, and circulates throughout the body, and this happens as continuously as long as your heart is beating. So let's move on further to the nucleus. The next we study about is the nucleus. Now I told you for any organism, for anything, for any object, there needs to be a central processing unit for it to perform its functions. So in the case of humans, in the case of cells, actually to be precise, we have the nucleus. The nucleus is the central processing unit inside the whole of the cell that controls the activities of the cells to perform the various life functions. Now let us study about the morphology of this. Let us study about the details about the nucleus. So nucleus, as I told you, is the central and the largest component right over here. That it is centrally located. It is the largest component. You can compare the size of it to any other organelle. You will see that nucleus is the largest organelle present. And the next point is that it has a porous membrane and it helps in DNA and RNA synthesis. Now obviously over here you see this and this. All these structures, they are having little gaps in between them, right over here, like this. So since it has these porous structure, this porous structure helps in the in and out of the genetic material, that is the DNA and RNA. Now DNA and RNA are two genetic material. So over here in the structure of nucleus, you see that the nucleus is porous for the transfer of the DNA and the genetic material out of this. So now nucleus is related to the production of DNA and RNA, that is the genetic material. And genetic material, basically it means nothing but that it gives us the characters that we have. Like one person will have brown eyes while the other person will have greenish eyes. That's a genetic character. Or the texture of the hair for that matter. So DNA is the main reason why we have these variations from person to person. So what does the nucleus does? Since it's porous, it produces these genetic materials like DNA, RNA, and sends them out, which are further carried out to the rest of the body for the rest of the functioning. Now, what does the nucleus also performs? The functions of controlling of the cell. It controls all the activities that go on in the cell. Since I told you it is a central processing unit of the cell, it will control the activities that will be performed in the mitochondria, by the Golgi bodies, by the vacuoles, by any other organelle that is present over there. The next part is that it takes part in the cell division. Now, if you remember, I explained to you that cells can divide and replicate onto themselves. Now, the main driving factor behind this is the nucleus. Because nucleus releases enzymes like these that help in the process and it fastens the process. So that is why the nucleus is helpful, because it takes part in the activities like cell division. The next would be that the inherited characteristics are transmitted to the next generation. Since the DNA, I told you that DNA is the genetic material, it defines the characters of an individual. So the individual from progeny to progeny, that means from the generations to generations, will have these characters in common. That is why it is said that you resemble your ancestors. Why? Because your genetic characters are the same. So and one more part about the enzymes that I told you. If not clear about the word enzymes, enzymes are nothing but these are chemicals that are in the body, that are synthesized in the body, and they help to fasten the pace of reaction that is happening in your body. So in this way, when it releases the enzymes, it takes part in the cell division. It also controls the functions of cells by release of enzymes to it. So let's move on to the next part, that would be the vacuoles. So the vacuoles are nothing but the empty spaces that have the organelles with the single covering on them, single membrane cover on them. And also the vacuoles store excretory products and secretions temporarily. So over here you can see the structure of vacuoles. I've marked it right over here. This is the first vacuole, the second, the third. Like these vacuoles are present in the whole of the structure in many numbers actually, but the number of vacuoles in animal cell is more than the number of vacuoles in plants, because the plant cells have larger size of vacuoles while the animal cells have smaller size of vacuoles. And these vacuoles, as you can see, are the empty spaces. They hold the excretory products and the secretions temporarily, because the cell is such a well-designed unit. The debris that is removed off from the metabolic activities and the metabolic processes need to be stored at some place. Supposedly, just for this example, take that you're performing some craft work and you need to segregate the fair work from the rough work that you've done. So what would you do is you would take your papers and all the debris that's left that you had used and dump it in the dustbin nearby, and later that would go on to the rest of the rest of the part where it will be disposed of. So similarly in these cells also, this is used for temporary storage of the excretory and the secretion of the products, and later it is all disposed of. So let's move to the next point, that is the cytoplasm. Now I explained to you in this diagram that cytoplasm is present all over the cell and it embeds all the organelles of the cell. So pink shaded region that you see all over, that's the cytoplasm. But there is one hitch to this. The hitch is that the nucleus does not contain cytoplasm. The nucleus contains fluid of its own with which it carries on the whole process of DNA synthesis and giving the characters to the genes or to the chromosomes. Now let me tell you about chromosomes. What are they? So what DNA does is, when DNA is polymerized and they aggregate to form long strands, they finally result into chromosomes. And these number of chromosomes, when they come together, they form a gene, and this gene is responsible for giving you the character that you have with you. Just like I explained you with the example of the eye color, of the hair texture, of your skin tone, or any other physical aspect, or even the behavioral aspects actually. So the cytoplasm is nothing but the liquid substance, the semi-fluid substance that fills the cell. And now the semi-fluid substance will contain the water-soluble and organic and inorganic substances, because you can see over here that it has many ions. I have indicated with the help of the white dots that these are the water-soluble, inorganic and organic substances or ions that are present in it, because ions are also helpful for conducting the signaling in the whole of the body. So cytoplasm consists that to enhance the conducting process, that is the electrical impulse from the rest of the body. So let's move on to the next part, that's the Golgi body. Now Golgi bodies are present over here. This right here is the Golgi body. This over here is the Golgi body. Now what does the Golgi body do? Golgi body has enzymes stored inside it. So I told you, right, that when the nucleus, it performs certain activities, it needs enzymes, and enzymes do nothing but they pace up the reaction process and they help perform activities on a much enhanced rate and on a much faster rate. So what does the nucleus do? It sends signals to this Golgi body to release the enzyme. That enzyme reaches to the site and the further action is performed actually. So this is is nothing but it's a flat stack of the body, that's the flat stack or organelle that's embedded in the whole of the cytoplasm like every other organelle, and it has the function of releasing and storing enzymes inside it. Now just for your extra knowledge, I'll tell you there's this enzyme named as lysozyme. What does it do? It's known as a suicidal enzyme, so either a suicidal bag actually. So when a cell is not functioning properly and when a cell is not having the ability to reproduce or to perform the functions that usually a cell needs to perform at the most optimum and enhanced rate, what does this cell do? Or for that matter, even when the cell is infected by any other microorganism or a host. So these lysozymes that are the suicidal bags, they come with a picture and they lyse the whole of the cell and they prevent the functioning of the cell, and in this way they maintain the balance in the living organisms.